Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's video. I know why you're here. There's no need to feel ashamed. You want to go fast, and you want to do it while spending as little coin as possible. I can't blame you. We've all been there. Why should all the leader bike chads with rich daddies get to have the fun while the rest of you are stuck riding 20-year-old SV650s? But don't worry, I've got you covered. We're going to talk about 7 fast motorcycles you can find for less than $5,000. Considering you can barely find any new motorcycle for less than $5,000, you're definitely not going to be able to find a new fast motorcycle for that cheap. So we'll be looking at used bikes with good reputations. We don't want something too old or too unreliable, and I tried my best to not include any older gen super sport bikes because obviously if you want to go fast in the most degenerate and reckless way possible, you could buy a super clapped Gixxer 600 from your local weed dealer for $2,000, but I know you're better than that. So without further ado, let's get into it. You want to go fast without breaking the bank? The first bike on the list is a Knockout, a motorcycle that can pretty easily find for less than $5,000 that's got some nice get up and go is the Yamaha FZ1. Before the MT-10 was Yamaha's ultimate squid machine, the FZ1. It was one of the most acclaimed naked bikes around. The second generation ran from 2006 until 2015 when it was replaced by the MT-10. During this time, it was awarded second place by Rider Magazine during their naked bike shootout. The FZ1 was powered by a 998cc inline-4 engine that was detuned for more mid-range power coming from the R1. It was putting down 127 horsepower and 66 foot-pounds of torque to the rear wheel. Not bad for motorcycle you can now buy for the price of a Royal Enfield. The FZ1 was fuel injected after 2006, so you won't have to worry about any fussy carburetor problems like many older bikes are plagued with. In standard naked bike fashion, the FZ1 was praised for its versatility and balance between sporty riding and comfort. The engine was powerful, delivered strong acceleration down low without sacrificing too much top-end power. The power delivery was smooth and linear, just like the progression of my relationship with your mother. The FZ1 also had a comfortable and upright riding position that provided good wind protection thanks to the smaller fairing and windscreen, making it a suitable option for long rides or highway commuting. The bike suspension was fully adjustable in the front and rear, so you could get this bike fully dialed in too. One of the few downsides of the FZ1 is the weight, coming in at 480 pounds wet, about 20 pounds heavier than the MT-10. But for $5,000, you can get a comfortable and reliable Yamaha that makes 127 horsepower to the rear wheel. And if that doesn't satisfy your unique taste, then maybe you shouldn't have spent all your money on a college education and maybe have more money for a motorcycle. Another motorcycle that's an absolutely early 2000s sport touring gem is the 5th generation Honda VFR800 Interceptor. I hear this all the time in the comments, and today we are talking about it. What is arguably the most important aspect of the VFR is the V4 engine. This engine was a stroked out and detuned version of the 749cc V4 found in the RC45 Honda used in World Superbike. In the VFR, this 782cc engine made 108 horsepower and 55 foot-pounds of torque. Like most V4 engines that had come before and after this motorcycle, this engine had a broad torque spread for power across the wider portion of the rev range. While this engine layout has provided fruitful on the racetrack for both Honda and Ducati, it is also a preferable engine layout for fatherly sport touring when you just gotta go Home Depot on a Sunday morning, but you'd want to get there as fast as possible. The 5th gen VFR doesn't have the slick underseat exhaust, but it does make use of a single-sided swing arm, which just always looks great on a red fully faired motorcycle. While you might be skeptical about a 20-year motorcycle, you gotta remember it's a Honda, overbuilt to scrupulous standards. The VFR 800 is really comfortable to ride too, so it's not uncommon for these bikes to have 50,000 trouble-free miles. So don't shy away from a VFR that has like 25 or 30k miles, as long as the engine isn't even close to being middle-aged yet, unlike your mom who is long past her prime. Maybe she just spent a little bit too much time in her tanning bed in the 90s, but I don't mind, baby. I don't mind at all. I know I mentioned I was going to avoid straight up early model super sport motorcycles because that's just kind of easy, but this bike is too cool to leave off the list for today. Kawasaki made some versions of the ZX-7R race bike from 1989 until all the way to 2003. And the later year models from 1996 until 2003 are peak Y2K energy. They've got the nice rounded fairings and bodywork before Kawasaki got so aggressive in their design. And in the 90s and early 2000s, Kawasaki green was like a Nickelodeon slime green, not radioactive Monster Energy green. The ZX-7R has a 748cc inline 4 engine that makes around 109 horsepower and 59 foot-pounds of torque to the rear wheel. If you're dedicated to the sport bike squid life, a 750 has many advantages for street use over a 600, with more torque accessible down low thanks to the extra displacement. The ZX-7R handles exactly how you'd expect a totally analog sport bike from the early 2000s to handle. It provides a rowdy and unadulterated 110 horsepower experience compared to the muted and modern leader bike with nearly 200 ponies and a suite of rider aids. The suspension is fully adjustable and this bike uses Tokiko brakes. These bikes have a lot of historical pedigree, and ultra clean limited edition or incredibly low model versions of these motorcycles have been sold at auction for over 20 grand, but there are plenty of ZX-7Rs that have been used as intended in decent but well-loved condition for less than 5 grand. Also, this motorcycle was called a variety of names across different generations, including the ZX-7R, the ZX-7, and ZX-R750. That's something to be aware of if you're looking around for one.
Well, check this out. It's the new sensation taking everyone by storm. Yummy! That's right, it's a brake bleeder kit on YN Moto. It's fun and easy. Order the kit and use the vacuum to flush your fluid out. It's that easy. Now you can bleed brakes on all the bikes you own with no fuss and no muss. Dirt bikes, race bikes, street bikes, and hell, even cruisers. Make sure you pick it up on our store, shop.yamanoob.co. Yummy!
Now, look, I have a bit of a soft spot for older Buell motorcycles. There's something endearing, but also almost kind of sad and pathetic about a sport bike with a Harley-Davidson engine. But Eric Buell showed a lot of ingenuity to design a performance-oriented motorcycle based around a lumpy V-twin. If you're stuck with a certain engine, you have to find other ways to make your bike lighter and handle better. You can find a couple different Buell motorcycles for sale on the cheap. Of course, if you're looking for a fast motorcycle, you should avoid the Buell Blast, and if you're looking for a motorcycle that doesn't outright suck, avoid the X1 Lightning. But the XB series from Buell, including the XB9R and the XB12R Firebolts, are honestly pretty neat. The XB9R will be a little cheaper, but the XB12R are more common and arguably a better motorcycle thanks to the bigger engine. Otherwise, both motorcycles are nearly identical. Both versions of the Firebolt use a Harley-Davidson Sportster-derived V-twin, and the XB12R, Buell managed to squeeze a whole 100 horsepower out of this engine. They used many other design tricks to aid in the performance of this machine. Buell wanted to have all the weight down low and centered in the motorcycle, and as a result, you'll find the frame acts as a fuel tank and the swing arm as the oil reservoir. Yeah, Eric Buell was kind of nutty. It's also got a huge single rotor up front too. There's lots of cool little things about the Buells. The XB12R has tons of grunty low-down power that you would expect from a Sportster engine, but unlike a Sportster, the Firebolt is lightweight, nimble, and eager to flick back and forth on the side of the tire. It's very sporty and fun to ride. I rode an XB9R a few years ago and it was really good. The engine sucked, but it was really good. These bikes are just so strange, but they're a cool and funky piece of motorcycle history. It might not be fast by some standards, but we're talking about a budget-friendly bike today that makes almost 100 horsepower. And remember, there's always the trailer park Gixxer if all you care is about peak horsepower. Oh yeah, the XB12R also makes 84 foot-pounds of torque, which is pretty good. The next motorcycle on the list doesn't take any persuasion or use of clever language regarding the character or the charm. It's just a straight-up good motorcycle, and the motorcycle in question is the Triumph Street Triple 675. This motorcycle making its way onto the list was eye-opening for me in a few ways. I saw a very clean 2009 Street Triple on Cycle Trader for $3,900. This was bizarre to me because it was so cheap, but then I realized that 2009 was 14 years ago, and I had to take an Advil and lie down for a while. But this is absolutely a great bike. You know, I love my Daytona and Triumph triples in general. Triumph made the Street Triple since 2007. It shared a lot of the styling cues from the existing Speed Triple model, but plucked the engine and frame from the Daytona 675. The engine was detuned for street use, although it still makes a claimed 106 horsepower and 50 foot-pounds of torque, which seems to be around the sweet spot for sub $5 grand motorcycles. In 2007, this motorcycle was leaps and bounds above other lackluster middleweight naked bikes coming from the Big Four, the SV650 notwithstanding. While the early Street Triples and Daytonas were known to have their quirks, now 15 years after the fact, if these bikes are running in good condition, most of the Triumph Gremlins have likely been exercised and it should be smooth sailing. One of the big things to look out for on these are the reg rec and the stators. That tends to be an issue. The Street Triple 675 was produced until 2017 when it was replaced by the 765. So considering the 10-year production run, aftermarket parts are pretty easy to come by. I feel like a broken record when talking about naked bikes, but the Street Triple 675 is a bike that is comfortable to ride on the daily, but also quick and nimble enough for sporty ridings and twisties, or if you take it to the track as well. Alright boys, the next bike on the list is Yamaha FJR1300. Since 2001, this motorcycle has been providing the world that a motorcycle meant to be ridden in New Balance sneakers and jean shorts can also be a bit of a ripper. The FJR1300 is a sport touring machine powered by a swole 1298cc inline 4. Can't find a good deal on a Gen 1 Busa with a stretched swing arm and a nitrous kit? Then find yourself an FJR. With both having 1300cc inline 4 engines, they're basically the same. The FJR makes 142 horsepower and 99 foot-pounds of torque. The FJR1300 is still made today and sold for like 18 grand, but you can find older gen models owned by retirees looking to trade up to a Goldwing who will sell their bikes for like $4,500. And they're clean and they're taken care of by an old guy. It's fantastic. The FJR is super reliable, really comfortable, and honestly kind of quick. Yeah, this bike weighs like 600 to 650 pounds depending on year and trim level, but that just means you'll have more momentum to keep you moving down the road. The normal Venn diagram for motorcycle includes 3 categories: fast, cheap, and reliable. And very few motorcycles can satisfy all 3 requirements. And the ones that do usually have one factor outside of the Venn diagram that is determining why they're so affordable despite being fast and reliable. For the FJR, that factor is just how much dad energy is exuded from this bike. No one is going to say it's stylish or exciting, but it's practical and it's fast, and dads love practicality. Most love practicality more than they love their own sons, especially if their sons ride Gixxer 600s and wear Corona flip-flops. And the last motorcycle on the list today is the Honda VTR1000F Superhawk. The Superhawk, also known as the Firestorm in other countries outside of the US, which, can we just take a moment to kind of doff our cap to Honda's naming conventions? It's absolutely crazy. It was produced by Honda from 1997 until 2005. This motorcycle is powered by a 996cc V-twin engine for more street-oriented power delivery. The Superhawk made 116 horsepower and 65 foot-pounds of torque. This bike wouldn't be ideal bike for track day riding, but was considered just about perfect for street duty when it debuted in 1997, and it won a handful of awards from magazine publications at the time, including top 10 best bikes of the year when it was received the number 1 spot in Cycle World's Open Class Superbike Shootout in the same year. This bike was so beloved at the time of its release, Suzuki released the SV1000 based on the SV650 platform in an attempt to cash in on the larger sporty V-twin niche that Honda was capitalizing on with this motorcycle. Bikes like the Superhawk aren't designed to have super high peak horsepower figures, but instead be a motorcycle that you're not afraid to squeeze all the juice out of that you can from the engine, which for many riders is far more enjoyable for normal use. Plus, the VTR 1000 has a lovable V-twin exhaust note. Who else thinks Honda should start making V-twin and V4 motorcycles again? Come on. If Kawasaki can bring back a 400cc inline 4 with the ZX-4R, Honda should be able to make a V-twin sport bike again. But alas, we all know that will likely never happen. And luckily, there are still a decent amount of Honda Superhawks kicking around for less than $5 grand. That about sums it up for today. Which bike would you be stoked to grab for less than $5,000? There are plenty of gems out there and you have to keep your eyes peeled. Let me know in the comments down below if you picked up a fast motorcycle for less than $5,000 and what it was. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will catch you on the next one. Fact: a TI-83 calculator has 6 times more processing power than the computer that landed Apollo 11 on the moon. Goodbye.
Well, look at you. You've made it to the end of another Yami Noob video. You should consider yourself pretty lucky because I have curated this one right over here for you to continue watching. It's probably just as good as the one you just saw. Unless you hated the one you just saw. I don't know, maybe leave me a comment down below about how much you hated it as well too. Or just keep watching this one. Make sure you keep watching Yami Noob. Don't forget to keep watching Yami Noob. That's the most important thing. Keep watching Yami Noob.